In fact, most of the mediation that is sought is by women. Not husbands are very reluctant in the Muslim community. Coming from a patriarchal society, many husbands, they feel that, hey, no, it is embarrassment to go for counseling. It is an embarrassment to go to a third party to seek solution, because in the Eastern culture, in the Middle Eastern and the Asian and African culture, most of the disputes are solved at community level in the extended family.
I would disagree with you there. It's not just Eastern cultures. All men, you know, you always hear the joke about a man always refused to ask the way, which way, how do I get there, and always lost for a few hours. So it's maybe a human nature in men in general.
But when it comes to family matters, this is one of the things that prevailed in the Eastern culture, I would say, because I have grown up part of my life in the East, and having grown up most of my life in the West, I know the other side of the picture as well. But most of the women, that I was saying, come for seeking solutions, and what I have found that they are not dumb. Because what Muslims do generally is they shop around for solutions.
Yes.
If they don't like this Imam's fatwa ruling, they go to another one.
Yes.
And they go to a third one until they find, and even if then, I have seen women here, Muslim women over the years, like who have come from remote villages of their home country, who know nothing about their own legal system back home, and not even knowing Canada, and yet I have found them reaching the highest level of the court in this country to seek justice. So how can somebody say that Muslim women will be deprived or oppressed over here if mediation and arbitration is allowed in the Muslim community? Why do we have to be discriminated?
The important thing is maybe women were deprived of the justice system back home. But I find here in Canada they have access and they practice it. That doesn't mean that everybody knows the right. There's always in all communities people that don't know the right. But it was the justice system back home that didn't give them the right, and it did deprive them. But our wonderful system here in Canada is open, and I find people, women and men, pick up quickly and learn their rights. Maybe we'll talk to you, Nafisa. You tell us your experience. I understand you've did some research on this topic.
Sure. Actually, one thing that I wanted to emphasize, anytime that we're talking about Sharia, I think we need to talk about it in the Canadian context. And what Sharia in the Canadian context is actually not Sharia. And Imam Abdulhai alluded to this earlier. What we're talking about here is Islamic arbitration. So it's dispute resolution that is informed by the principles of Sharia, but not necessarily Sharia in and of itself. So what it is actually the system exists as an alternative to the civil court system. So as Muslims, those of us who want to use an alternative to the civil court system, it's an additional option that's available for those who want to utilize it. And as a community, what we need to do is we need to begin informing members of our own community about this option that exists and why we should use it, the advantages, the disadvantages, and sort of move forward on that. But we also need to respect people's right to choose. So if they choose to go the alternative resolution, dispute resolution route, we should support them. If they choose to go the civil court system route, we should also support them. And the point right here for us should be the respect for people's choice, right to choose.
Maybe an interesting point. You mentioned it's arbitration more than Sharia. So why is it always the headlines in the newspaper, Sharia is applied in Canada? Is that fear-mongering, or, you know, I don't understand, because, you know, I wasn't very involved, but I read the newspapers, it's always Sharia in Canada. So maybe you can highlight us
I think it is a fear-mongering, if I can interject here, because people think that the Sharia is applied in some Muslim countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia without much control or regulations. They know how they apply that, that is up to them. We are not here to dispute. But here in Canada, we have laws that no other law can be applied over here. Whatever decisions we make, the Ontario's laws over here and the Canadian laws, they have primacy over everything. So we have nothing to fear. We cannot have any of those systems that is in other countries applied. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah.
Yes. I think it's great to use the word Sharia, because as long as you know, as soon as you say Sharia, the first picture that comes to people's minds is hands being cut off, people being stoned for adultery. This is the impression that has been instilled in Canadians about Sharia law. But in fact, this is not Sharia law. What is being proposed in Ontario is a civil arbitration process. We are not talking about criminal law at all. We are dealing with civil arbitration.
Yes.
And I think that there's definitely an element of fear-mongering that's going on. The discussion that's been raging, I guess, in the media has not been a very nuanced discussion. But at the same time, we should recognize that there are valid criticisms, or concerns, rather, might be a better way of terming it, that have been raised, such as protection of the vulnerable. Now, this is a concern, an issue for any legal system. Any legal system that exists should be concerned with protecting vulnerable elements within their community. Women, children, men, the people who don't have as many resources, as financial resources as others. Now, when you talk about alternative dispute resolution, we need to, as a community, recognize that if safeguards are in place, why should we not respect the right of individuals who want to go that route to choose alternative dispute resolution, Islamic arbitration?
And the important thing to me is not if, I am sure that there are safeguards. The system has been working for other faiths, and it's a choice. I look at it for myself. I would like to have that choice. I might choose it or not. I prefer to choose it, and I want to choose it. I don't feel it's fair that somebody else tells me because he doesn't want it, I shouldn't. I should be any different than anybody else. So for me, it's a matter of choice, and all I ask is give me this choice. Let me make my own choice.
Actually, on the point of safeguards, I'm glad that you brought it up, is that when this act was originally introduced in 1991 by the NDP government, it was meant as a form of commercial arbitration. That was the original intention. So it wasn't necessarily arbitration in the family law sphere. Now, the criticism that's been launched in the media predominantly on this issue has been Sharia oppresses women. And that is where that's the problem. I have a serious problem with that sort of line of argumentation, because I'm a Muslim woman. I live my life according to Sharia, and I do not in any circumstances feel that it oppresses me. But from a legalistic perspective, there is a concern that arbitration, because it's a private system, it's a privatized system, that because it operates in addition to the civil court system, that there aren't safeguards in place to ensure that there are qualified individuals who are acting as arbitrators, that people are being directed to the right people, that resources are being put in the right places, that the decisions that are coming out as a result of arbitration tribunals are decisions that fit under our rubric of what we consider to be acceptable in terms of family law dispute resolutions.
Maybe one point, if you don't mind, because it's, this oppression thing, and people link, Sharia to oppression. And yes, there are some Muslim societies, not because of Islam, women are oppressed. But unfortunately, some of these people, when they immigrated to Canada, they brought these issues with them. We don't see the oppression here. There might be exceptions, but the issue is Sharia and Islam does not oppress women. Just because some societies misunderstandingly or wrongly do it, we don't have to be afraid here. When we came to Canada, we left all this behind, and we should not bring it with us.
You raise an interesting point when you talk about when you came to Canada, here people are not oppressed. Well, it depends how you define oppression.
Yep.
And oppression, people looking at it in this particular area is whether it is domestic violence, or depriving someone from their rights. If that is the case, then we have lots of cases here in the society, regardless of the faith, a high level of domestic violence, high level of depriving women of their rights. I have served as a human rights commissioner since '99, and a number of cases that I have seen, like in Ontario right now, women getting fired for getting pregnant. Employers dismissing them because they are not hiring them. It says if you are expecting a baby. This is still happening to women in Ontario. So when we talk,
these are human issues.
These are human issues. It's sexual harassment. We had the most cases at one time, and still coming to the Human Rights Commission on sexual harassment in workplace for women. And this is happening to all women, not just Muslim women, when you talk about oppression. So there are oppressions at various levels over here. Disability. Most cases I have seen in the commission in my tenure is people with disabilities, employers not willing to recognize. So here, when we talk about oppression, it has a very big dimension.
Right. I think the point that needs to be made too is that oppression is not because the Sharia is flawed, because Islamic rulings are flawed. That is not the case. In fact, if all of the Islamic rulings are followed, no Muslim woman will ever be oppressed. But it's just a matter of implementing it correctly, coming to terms with a proper interpretation of what the laws mean and carrying them out. But to argue that Sharia is inherently flawed is unfair to Islam and to Muslims.
Right. And as a community, if we set up the appropriate institutions, and that is what is being argued for here, is set up the appropriate institutions so that we can ensure that the vulnerable within our community are protected. Let's set up these safeguards. Let's make sure that the decisions that are coming out are regulated.